It was 1956, and a young Elvis Presley walked up to James Brown backstage and said 5 words that made everyone go silent. "I can outdance you, Brown." What happened next on that Memphis stage became the birth of a legendary friendship. The Beale Street Music Festival was in full swing on a hot August night in Memphis, Tennessee. The air was thick with humidity and the smell of barbecue, and the crowd was electric with anticipation. This wasn't just any concert. This was the night that brought together some of the biggest names in rhythm and blues, and the headliner was none other than James Brown, already making waves as one of the most dynamic performers on the circuit. James Brown was 23 years old and hungry. He'd been performing for years, clawing his way up from poverty in Augusta, Georgia, and he was finally starting to get recognition. His stage show was unlike anything people had seen before. The splits, the spins, the way he seemed to defy gravity with every move, it was revolutionary. Brown knew he was special, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd earned every bit of respect he received. But there was someone else at the festival that night who was also hungry, also confident, and also convinced he was going to change the world. His name was Elvis Presley, and he was 21 years old. Elvis had just started making a name for himself. He'd released a few singles that were causing a stir, and his appearances on local television shows had young women screaming and their parents clutching their pearls. But in August 1956, Elvis wasn't yet the king. He was still the kid from Tupelo, Mississippi, trying to prove he belonged on the same stage as the legends. When Elvis showed up at the festival, he wasn't scheduled to perform. He was there as a fan, wanting to see James Brown, whose music and movement had captivated him. Elvis had been studying Brown's performances, watching how he moved, how he connected with the audience, how he made every single person in the room feel like he was performing just for them. After Brown's first set, Elvis somehow managed to talk his way backstage. Security was looser in those days, especially if you had a pretty face and a charming smile, and Elvis had both in abundance. He found Brown's dressing room, and without knocking, walked right in. Brown was sitting in front of a mirror, wiping the sweat from his face with a towel. His suit was soaked through, and he was breathing hard from the performance he'd just given. When he saw Elvis in the mirror's reflection, he turned around with a mixture of curiosity and annoyance. "Can I help you?" Brown asked, not unkindly, but with the tone of someone who was used to dealing with overeager fans. Elvis extended his hand. "Mr. Brown, my name is Elvis Presley. I just wanted to tell you that was the most incredible thing I've ever seen." Brown shook his hand, his grip firm. "I appreciate that. You a musician?" "Yes, sir. I sing, mostly. But I've been watching how you move, and I've been practicing." Elvis paused, and then, with the kind of confidence that can only come from youth and naivety, he said, "I think I can outdance you, Brown." The room went completely silent. Brown's road manager, who'd been standing by the door, actually took a step forward, ready to throw this disrespectful kid out on the street. One of Brown's backup singers gasped. Even the guitar player who'd been tuning his instrument stopped mid-turn of the peg. But Brown didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed. Not a mocking laugh, but something that sounded almost delighted. "You think you can outdance me?" Brown repeated, standing up from his chair. He was shorter than Elvis by a couple of inches, but his presence made him seem much larger. "That's bold. That's real bold." Elvis didn't back down. "I've been studying you, sir. I've learned your moves, and I've been adding my own style to them. I'm not saying I'm better than you. I'm saying I'd like to try." Brown studied Elvis for a long moment. This kid had either the biggest guts or the smallest brain he'd ever encountered, and Brown wasn't sure which. But there was something in Elvis's eyes, not arrogance, but genuine passion. This wasn't some punk trying to disrespect him. This was a fellow performer who wanted to test himself against the best. "All right," Brown said slowly. "You want to dance? Let's dance, right now, on my stage. You do your thing, I'll do mine, and we'll let the crowd decide." Elvis's eyes went wide. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. You walked into my dressing room and challenged me. Now you've got to back it up." 10 minutes later, word had spread through the festival that something incredible was about to happen. The crowd that had been starting to disperse for the break between sets suddenly rushed back toward the stage. People were talking, speculating, trying to figure out if the rumor was true. Was that young white kid who'd been making noise on the radio really about to dance against James Brown? Elvis stood in the wings, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. He'd practiced Brown's moves in front of his mirror at home, in empty rooms, in the back of venues before his own shows. But this was different. This was James Brown's stage, James Brown's crowd, and James Brown's territory. Brown walked out first, and the crowd erupted. He didn't say anything, just stood at the microphone with a smile that suggested something special was about to happen. "Ladies and gentlemen," Brown said, his voice carrying that distinctive rasp that would become famous worldwide. "We've got something unusual tonight. There's a young man backstage who thinks he can move like James Brown. Now I could tell him he's crazy and send him home, or," he paused for dramatic effect, "I could let him come out here and prove it." The crowd roared with excitement and curiosity. "So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Mr. Elvis Presley." Elvis walked out, and the reaction was mixed. Some people cheered. They'd heard his music on the radio. Others looked skeptical. A few actually booed. This was a black audience at a rhythm and blues festival, and here was a white kid about to try to dance like James Brown. Brown looked at Elvis, and for just a second Elvis saw something unexpected in his eyes: encouragement. "You want to go first, or should I?" Brown asked quietly, just for Elvis to hear. "You go first," Elvis said. "Show me what I'm up against." Brown nodded and turned to his band. "Boys, let's give them Please, Please, Please." The band kicked into the opening, and Brown exploded into movement. He did the split drop, the mashed potato, the spin move that seemed to defy the laws of physics. He slid across the stage like he was on ice, dropped to his knees, bounced back up. Every move was precise, powerful, and filled with soul. The crowd was screaming, on their feet, completely absorbed in what they were witnessing. When Brown finished, the applause was deafening. He walked over to Elvis, breathing hard, and said, "Your turn, youngster." Elvis took a deep breath and stepped forward. He'd chosen his moment carefully. He turned to the band and asked them to play a blues number, something he could work with. As the music started, Elvis began to move. What happened next surprised everyone, including James Brown. Elvis didn't try to exactly copy Brown's moves. Instead, he'd taken what he'd learned from watching Brown and filtered it through his own style. He had the hip swivel that would become his signature. But underneath it, you could see Brown's influence in the way he dropped to one knee, in the way he spun. He combined rockabilly energy with rhythm and blues soul, creating something that was neither fully one nor the other, but something entirely new. The crowd's skepticism began to melt. Women in the audience started screaming. Men were nodding their heads, acknowledging that this kid had talent. Elvis wasn't just copying, he was interpreting, translating, creating. When Elvis finished, the applause was genuine and strong. Not as loud as it had been for Brown. This was still Brown's crowd, but respectful, impressed. Brown walked over to Elvis, and everyone waited to see what would happen. Would Brown put him in his place? Would he dismiss the young upstart? Instead, Brown extended his hand. "You've got something, kid. You really do. You're not better than me." The crowd laughed. "But you're not bad at all." Then Brown did something that shocked everyone. He turned to the crowd and said, "How about we do one together?" The crowd erupted. This had never been done before. The established star and the up-and-comer, performing together, right there on the spot. The band started playing, and for the next 5 minutes, James Brown and Elvis Presley traded moves on that Memphis stage. Brown would do a spin. Elvis would answer with a hip shake. Elvis would drop to his knee. Brown would do a split. They were challenging each other, yes, but they were also celebrating each other, pushing each other to be better. The crowd was going absolutely wild. People were standing on their chairs. Some were crying. They were witnessing something historic, the moment when two different worlds of music came together and showed that talent and passion transcended race, genre, and ego. When the song ended, both men were drenched in sweat and breathing hard. They looked at each other and simultaneously broke into huge grins. Brown grabbed Elvis and pulled him into a hug right there on stage, lifting him off his feet despite being the shorter man. "You've got a future, Presley," Brown said into Elvis's ear, loud enough for the front row to hear. "Don't let anybody tell you different." After they walked off stage together, Brown brought Elvis back to his dressing room. This time Elvis was invited. "You know what you did out there?" Brown asked, sitting down and reaching for a bottle of water. "You showed respect. You didn't try to be me. You learned from me, and then you made it your own. That's what a real artist does." Elvis sat down, still trying to catch his breath. "Mr. Brown, I meant what I said. I've been studying you because you're the best. I just wanted to see if I could keep up." "You more than kept up," Brown said. But let me tell you something, and I want you to remember this. You're going to be successful. I can see it. You've got the look, you've got the talent, and you've got something else. You've got hunger. But when you make it big, and you will, don't forget where you learned to move. I could never forget that, Elvis said seriously. You're the blueprint. And you, Brown pointed at him, are going to take that blueprint and build something new, something that's yours. Just promise me something. Anything. When they start calling you the king of rock and roll, remember that rock and roll came from rhythm and blues, and rhythm and blues came from the people who looked like me. Give credit where it's due. Elvis nodded solemnly. You have my word, Mr. Brown. That night in Memphis became legend in the music community. People who were there told the story for decades. The night James Brown and Elvis Presley danced together became a symbol of what music could be when artists respected each other, across genres and races. As both men's careers exploded over the following years, they stayed in touch. When Elvis appeared on television and mentioned James Brown as one of his biggest influences, Brown called him to say thank you. When Brown performed in Las Vegas years later, Elvis came to the show and sent a note backstage that said, "Still learning from the master." In 1968, after Elvis's comeback special, Brown sent him a telegram that simply read, "You remembered everything I taught you, and you made it better. Proud of you, kid." The story of their Memphis dance-off became a touchstone for both men. Elvis would reference it in interviews, always giving Brown credit for teaching him how to move. Brown, in turn, would talk about the young white kid who'd had the courage to walk into his dressing room and challenge him, not out of disrespect, but out of genuine love for the art. When Elvis died in 1977, James Brown was one of the first people to speak publicly about his legacy. "That boy walked into my dressing room in 1956 and told me he could outdance me," Brown said, his voice thick with emotion. He was bold, he was brave, and he was respectful. He took what he learned and used it to break down barriers. He never forgot where he came from, and he never forgot the people who helped him get there. That's a real artist. That's a real man. Years later, when Brown himself was being honored at the Kennedy Center, he told the story of that August night in Memphis to the audience of dignitaries and celebrities. "Elvis Presley taught me something that night," Brown said. "He taught me that talent isn't about color or genre or where you're from. It's about passion, respect, and the courage to put yourself out there, even when you know you might fail." That kid had all three, and that's why he became the king. The night Elvis Presley challenged James Brown to a dance-off could have ended in humiliation or conflict. Instead, it became a moment that showed what happens when two talented people choose collaboration over competition, when they choose to lift each other up instead of tearing each other down. It was a lesson in respect, in artistry, and in the power of recognizing that there's enough room at the top for everyone who's willing to work hard and honor those who came before them. That August night in Memphis didn't just create a great story. It created a blueprint for how artists should treat each other, a blueprint that still resonates today. If this incredible story of mutual respect, artistic courage, and the birth of a legendary friendship moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about the power of respecting your influences while creating your own path. Have you ever been inspired by someone and then found your own way to express that inspiration? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more amazing true stories about music's greatest legends and the moments that defined them.